You survived another week. Thank you for listening, downloading, and supporting the Black Man with a Gun Show. Feeling pretty good right now. I'm hoping you're doing all right. Sir Winston Churchill said it's not enough to have lived. We should be determined to live for something. This week, all I could think of about revolvers. Introducing Otis McDonald and the Great Migration. Maryland shall issue is in the news. Michael J. Woodland on how to clean your rifle. And finally, way at the end, what's new with me.
BlackManWithAGun.com, Ken Blanchard's Pro Gun Podcast.
This show has been brought to you by CrossbreedHolsters.com. Crossbreed holsters are some of the finest holsters in America, and they're imitated for a reason. They sell holsters, belts, modular systems, and more. They're a U.S. company that my friend started back in 2005, and they have been a supporter of you and I for almost a decade. Crossbreed Holsters has raised the standard for customer service in the holster industry through its 2-week tried-free guarantee and a lifetime warranty. You've tried the rest, now get the best. Stick with CrossbreedHolsters.com.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This next portion of the show has been brought to you by Maryland Shall Issue. Maryland Shall Issue is an all-volunteer, nonpartisan organization dedicated to the preservation and advancement of gun owners' rights in Maryland. It seeks to educate the community about the right of self-protection, the safe handling of firearms, and the responsibility that goes with carrying a firearm in public. Join us today at marylandshallissue.org. If you are a gun owner who resides or could reside in Maryland, did you know your rights are under attack like never before? The Maryland General Assembly has put forth a series of egregious bills this session, and we ask you to help us fight them. Not only do we need self-defenders, but also hunters, competitors, tinkerers, and recreational shooters, as the legislature has declared all of us public enemy number one. Not content with making the lives of handgun owners miserable, now they are after the hunters and long guns. Bill SB 737 was just introduced, and that bill requires anyone desiring to purchase or, quote, receive a long gun, obtain a long gun qualification license. Highly similar to the handgun qualification license, this license will require 4 hours of training and fingerprinting and ban any person from receiving a long gun without having first applied to the state police for this LGQL. Even after getting the LGQL, a purchaser would also have to wait 7 days before picking up their long gun, and the bill would limit them to a single long gun purchase per month. Additionally, anyone who moves into the state will be required to register the long gun within 90 days of establishing residency. And there are loads of severe criminal penalties for those who fail to comply for any reason. This is just one of the horrible laws being passed this session. Another bill, HB 96, would ban temporarily, quote, loans of a handgun to another person, including a spouse or another person in the family in the home. Every such transfer would have to go through the state police using the 77R process and would include the 7-day waiting period. This bill would mean that a person could not leave their handgun accessible to any other person in the home. Each spouse would have to have separate ownership, and each would have to have their own gun safe that is inaccessible to anyone else. If all the anti-gun laws introduced thus far are passed, here is what you'll have to look forward to in the state of Maryland. Ban on purchasing any firearm without first paying a fee and obtaining training for a license. Ban on obtaining any firearm without first waiting 7 days. Ban on purchasing more than one firearm a month. Ban of Colt HBAR, AR-15, and similar rifles. Ban on any payment method other than credit cards for permit applications. Ban of handgun rentals. Ban on lending handguns or regulated firearms to anyone. Ban on anyone in your house having access to your guns. Ban on school programs using lead ammunition. ban on the manufacture of any firearm by an individual, ban on the possession, reception, or distribution of information on how to manufacture a firearm. The details and everything I said can be found at their legislation tracker on Maryland's shallissue.org's website. You see, the Maryland legislature is doubling down on control and domination. But we will fight these bills with our testimony and, if need be, file lawsuits. Do you know how you can help? You can let your legislators know what you think about these bills. You can join us in Annapolis on February 25th and February 27th, and on other dates these bills are being heard in the House and the Senate. The dates will be posted in our legislature tracker. You can become a member. You can renew your membership. You can donate to our litigation fund. We are fighting for your rights, and we thank you for anything and everything you can do to help. All this comes from Maryland Shall Issue, an all-volunteer, nonpartisan organization dedicated to the preservation, easy for you to say, and advancement of gun owners' rights in Maryland. Check them out, marylandshallissue.org. In our American segment this week, I want to introduce you to somebody that you could have known. His name is Otis McDonald, and he'll be forever known as the man who brought down Chicago's gun ban. After years of neighborhood watch meetings that changed nothing, a frustrated brother by the name of Otis McDonald drove to the gun rights rally in Illinois' capital. It was there that somebody put him in touch with a guy by the name of Alan Gura. This landmark U.S. Supreme Court decision that bears his name forced Chicago to fall in line with the rest of the country and allow citizens to keep firearms in their homes for self-defense. You see, it wasn't always like it is. The Justices' 5-4 decision in 2010 said that the Second Amendment did indeed imply to the states, effectively ending the city's nearly 3-decade handgun ban. McDonald versus City of Chicago case, in which on June 28, 2010, the Supreme Court ruled that the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which guarantees the right of the people to keep and bear arms, applies to state and local governments as well as to the federal government. Seems like a no-brainer, right? But it's not so with court cases, legal stuff. How we live. Common sense isn't as common as it used to be. You see, the case arose in 2008 when Otis McDonald, a retired African-American custodian, and others filed suit in U.S. District Court to challenge provisions of a 1982 Chicago law that, among other things, generally banned the new registration of handguns and made registration a prerequisite of possession of a firearm. The next day, the National Rifle Association and others filed separate lawsuits challenging the Chicago law and an Oak Park, Illinois law that generally prohibited the possession of carrying of handguns and the carrying of other firearms except rifles or shotguns in one's home or place of business. Each suit alleged that the law violated the right of individuals to possess and carry weapons, which the Supreme Court had found to be protected by the Second Amendment in District of Columbia versus Heller in 2008. Anticipating this finding, the plaintiffs in McDonald versus City of Chicago filed suit on the same morning that the decision in Heller was announced. How was that so? Because the Second Amendment Foundation and Alan Gura were on top of it. The crucial question, however, was whether the Second Amendment is applicable to the states and their political subdivisions, citing selective incorporation. The Supreme Court's gradual application to the states of most of the protections of the Bill of Rights through the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, which prohibits the states from denying life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The plaintiffs argued that the Second Amendment is applicable through that clause as well as though the amendment's privilege or immunities clause, which forbids the states from abridging the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. In an interview with the Chicago Tribune after winning the suit, Mr. McDonald said that the journey had been a lesson in history. He had come to understand more about his ancestors and the slave codes enacted to southern states during the Civil War that prohibited slaves from owning guns. After slavery was abolished, states adopted black codes that kept guns out of the hands of freed African Americans. He said, There was a wrong done a long time ago that dates back to slavery times. I could feel the spirit of those people running through me as I sat in the Supreme Court. Born in 1933 to Louisiana sharecroppers, Otis came to Chicago in 1952 after serving time in the Army. He eventually landed a job as a janitor at the University of Chicago and worked his way up to maintenance engineer. He had left school at the age of 14, never earned a high school diploma, but while working at the University of Chicago, he returned to school, earning an associate's degree from Kennedy King College. He retired in 1996. Otis actually met him several times, and he was a great guy. He was like a guy that you would love to know, like a deacon from an old church. Actually, he was one. He was one of those guys in your family that you looked up to. He was actually part of that great migration when 5 million Southern blacks moved to the north and to the west between 1915 and 1960. You ever hear about that? The Great Migration? Nobody really talks about it. But almost 90% of the people in America of African descent migrated to places like Chicago, Illinois, Detroit, Michigan, Pittsburgh, New York. And by World War II, the migrants continued to move north, but many headed west to Los Angeles, Oakland, San Francisco, California, Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington. You'll notice a trend there, too. There are also areas where there are predominantly stronger gun laws now. This first large movement of African Americans occurred during World War I, when 454,000 black Southerners moved north. In the 1920s, another 800,000 blacks left the South, followed by 398,000 blacks in the 1930s. Between 1940 and 1960, over 3,348,000 black people left the South for northern and western cities. One of the things that was attractive to me in learning my history was I realized that music also followed this migration. The blues. Yeah. The economic motivations for migration were a combination of the desire to escape oppressive economic conditions in the South and the promise of greater prosperity in the North. Since their emancipation from slavery, Southern rural blacks had suffered in the plantation economy and offered little chance of advancement. While a few blacks were lucky enough to purchase land, most were sharecroppers, like Mr. McDonald, tenant farmers, or farm laborers, barely subsiding from year to year. When World War I created a huge demand for workers in northern factories, many Southern blacks took this opportunity to leave the oppressive economic conditions in the South. The northern demand for workers was a result of the loss of 5 million men who left to serve in the armed forces, as well as the restriction of foreign immigration. Some sectors of the economy were so desperate for workers at this time that they would pay for blacks to migrate north. The Pennsylvania Railroad needed workers so badly that it paid the travel expenses of 12,000 black people. The Illinois Central Railroad, along with many steel mills, factories, and tanneries, similarly provided free railroad passes to blacks. World War I was the first time since emancipation that black labor was in demand outside of the agricultural South, and the economic promise was enough for many blacks to overcome substantial challenges to migrate. In addition to migrating for job opportunities, these brothers and sisters also moved north in order to escape the oppressive conditions of the South. Some of the main social factors for migration including lynching, an unfair legal system, inequality in education, and denial of suffrage. McDonald versus the city of Chicago was a hard-fought battle. The case was filed in 2008 and spent 2 years working its way through the system. Then Mayor Richard M. Daley was adamant that the city's ban on handguns remain intact and put the city's full force behind fighting the case in court. We also had fights in the gun rights movement. Yeah. But the Illinois State and Rifle Association and the Second Amendment Foundation won for the rest of us. Truth be told, that Mr. McDonald was not the only plaintiff in the concealed carry lawsuits against Illinois. I met quite a few of the others, and they are some great people. I actually like Chicagoans a lot. Not too long ago, the Illinois General Assembly was forced to pass a law allowing citizens to carry concealed carry, even in Illinois. After a long illness, he died April 4th at the age of 80. My friend, Otis McDonald.
I'm Otis McDonald. I was in the armed forces in Germany for 2 years, 9 months, and 21 days. When the situation in my neighborhood got a little hairier than I could live with, I knew then that something had to be done. And even though I knew I was going to be denied, it was still devastating to live where I live and be surrounded by what I was surrounded by, and seeing every day on the news what's happening to elderly people my age, and to go down there and then they say, no, you can't have a handgun. I just wanted to protect myself and my family and my property. I come to realize what it meant to so many and the country itself. A long time ago when I was a child, my mother used to teach me about values. And she would always wind up saying this phrase, Otis, if you don't in life find something that you will give your life for, you really haven't lived. Most of the politicians that's trying to deny me the right to protect myself has armed guards 24/7. So that tells me that they could care less about me, and that's hypocritical. When I heard Justice Thomas's reading and how far-reaching back that it went, it was really, really touching. And my mother and father would have been proud of me. I feel like I have done something for others, and then equally important, I believe that I've done something for the country. I didn't do all of that fighting and all that struggling and all of that putting my life out there on the line and going to the Supreme Court, winning this case, to have it moved out by somebody now. And in this race, if there are people out there who believe as I believe and feel as I feel, then they will want to preserve what I have accomplished in the Supreme Court's decision, what we have accomplished.
In our Back to Basics series, I want to talk to you about different types of firearms. We started off, well, not we, but back in the day, revolvers were the thing unless you were high-speed SWAT or Special Police Department. I still think revolvers have a purpose today. Firearms that resemble pistols have been around since the 16th century. Traditionally, a pistol was any handheld firearm. That includes derringers, semi-automatics, and shortened shotguns. They could technically be called pistols. But revolvers are different because of a rotating cylinder that carries their ammunition. The revolver we know today was first introduced en masse on this continent sometime between 1836 and 1842. The revolver has since become symbolic of our nation, even though it wasn't entirely invented here. It's the sidearm seen in the Western dramas of the 60s and the 70s. In both the single-action frontier type and the more modern double-action form, the revolver is purely American and is one of the most versatile firearms on the market today. Even though we all talk about Glocks and H&Ks and Canics and and Walters and just a whole bunch of different firearms, revolvers are still valid. There are a lot of types of revolvers, so it's impossible to cover them all. But there's two that you'll see most of the times when you go to the range. There's the single-action revolver and the double-action type, like the Smith & Wesson revolver that some security officers carry. The single-action type can be fired only by first manually drawing the hammer back to the full cock position. As the thumb draws the hammer back, it mechanically causes the cylinder to rotate a series of cams and springs, and they engage and lock into position, allowing the gun to stage a chamber in line with the barrel. The trigger is locked to the rear after this movement and requires minimal rearward pressure to compress the trigger. Now, this is where you see Dodge City, Matt Dillon, have immortalized the gesture of solemnly drawing the gun, fanning the hammer with the opposite hand, firing the gun until empty, and then smartly holstering an empty weapon in their holster. It should be noted that these double-action revolvers cannot be fanned like that because the mechanics are different. So what you'll see in the range won't be that. When the hammer is half-cocked, the cylinder can be spun, producing that familiar clicking sound. Now, if I was smart, I'd have one right now so you could hear the sound. But it's late. I don't want to open the safe and go through a whole bunch of iterations right now. But in the video that'll come out, talking about revolvers, I will show you all that. So, just a little commercial right here. Please go to blackmanwithagun.tv and subscribe to my YouTube channel. There's going to be a revolver review coming up soon. You know, single action revolvers are loaded different too than double action. If you do not remove the entire, you don't have to remove the entire cylinder to load each round singularly. Removal of the fired cartridges requires that the hammer be positioned the same as in loading. Then, as each chamber is rotated into position in the loading gate, the extractor rod laying in its housing alongside of the barrel is forced rearward by finger pressure on its head, pressing the empty case out of the chamber. And again, this I'll do a better job of showing you when it's actually video. And then you got the double action. That's what you're used to seeing. And now double action comes in a bunch of different sizes and colors. And now they even have lasers on the bad boy. Like had the Crimson Trace guy here a couple of weeks ago. And they have a lot of lasers made for revolvers just to help you in your target acquisition. A double action revolver is so called because the hammer can be moved back to its cock position by pulling the trigger partway. The hammer can then be dropped to fire the weapon as the trigger is pulled completed. So in reality, there is no break between the two operations. It feels like one continuous pull. Most double action pistols can be fired in single action mode though. Single action shots are generally more accurate because less pressure and movement is needed to drop the hammer. There's a nice article in the Blue Press by John Marshall talking about classic firearms, the Smith & Wesson Model 6738 Special Revolver. It says Chevys, Fords, hot dogs, apple pie, Smith & Wesson 38 Special Revolvers. All have been around for quite some time and are as familiar to you as the backs of our hands. But maybe you didn't realize it, but revolvers chambered for the 38 Special cartridge have been part of our United States heritage since the dawn of the 20th century. Smith & Wesson first introduced this 38 military hand ejector in 1899. This medium-sized K-frame handgun was chambered for two 38 caliber cartridges, the U.S. service round, also called the 38 Long Colt, and then new and slightly longer 38 Special. The 38 Special was first charged with black powder. Soon thereafter, it was routinely loaded with smokeless powder. In 1902, the 38 military was slightly modified to include an extractor rod lug under the barrel, and this arrangement has continued to the present day. Now, remember, just a second ago, I said the rod swung out, and that's when you used it to extract the shell casings on the single-action revolvers. You know, both the 38 Special and the Smith & Wesson revolvers that chambered it became enormously popular. The 38 Special has become the most accepted centerfire handgun round in the U.S. today. When introduced, it quickly became the de facto standard for police forces nationwide. It's also been used by our military, and many civilians have found that Smith's K-frames handle, quote, just right. The 38 Special, first lacking some punch with low velocities and round-nosed bullets, is no slouch today, though. Strengthened guns, higher velocity loadings, and expanding bullets have made modern rounds more than adequate for self-defense. Double-action revolvers are perhaps the most reliable handguns made, and learning to use them is a piece of cake for almost anybody. The .357 Magnum cartridge was introduced in 1935 by Smith & Wesson in a heavy end-frame revolver. It could also chamber the shorter .38 Special. The gun became popular, but a steady demand for lighter .38 Special guns continued. Many folks preferred them over the heavy recoiling Magnums. They were much more manageable and pleasant to shoot. Quickly follow-up shots were much easier to execute, particularly in the medium-sized K-frames. The Smith & Wesson K-frames have come a long way since they first were conceived. While the first ones could fire if dropped on their hammers, Smith & Wesson soon developed a hammer block that allowed firing only when the trigger was deliberately pulled. The first method used could be less than reliable if rust or congealed gun oil inhibited the block from moving into position. During World War II, a second method was developed, a positively activated sliding block that is virtually impossible to defeat in use. It's still standard for external hammered-equipped Smith & Wesson revolvers today. .38 Special revolvers are still quite widely used, and Smith & Wesson has continued to refine and improve the breed. The fixed-sight, quote, military and police, end quote, K-frame revolvers evolved to what is now known as Model 10, following Smith's use of model numbers for his guns in 1956. Or 57. In 1949, a 4-inch barrel, a micrometer adjustment sight, and a sloped front sight characterized the K-38 Combat Masterpiece revolver. This was considered the ultimate .38 revolver at the time for serious social work. It was available either blued or nickel-plated. This fine revolver became the Model 15 in 1957. Many were used in our armed forces. In 1972, Smith & Wesson took the Model 15 a step further, making a new gun that was even more desirable for defense and severe usage. The Model 67, called the K-38 Combat Masterpiece Stainless. It was essentially the same gun as the Model 15, except that it was made with stainless steel rather than being blued or plated. It was a 6-shot handgun and weighed 34 ounces empty. A 4-inch pinned barrel was standard, and the front sight soon after introduced was fitted with a red plastic insert for higher visibility. The first rear sights were also made from stainless steel, but these were soon changed to black to prevent sight glare. Both the rear sight leaf and the barrel rib were grooved. Unlike its .357 brother, the Model 66, the new 67s, had no ejector rod shroud, and the barrels were tapered to save weight. Walnut frame fitting Magna stocks were standard. The backstrap and forestrap had 10 grooves for better retention. An over-travel stop for the trigger was incorporated, but it can be easily removed if desired. This gun will handle plus P and plus P heavy loading as well as the old .38-44 increased pressure rounds. Many police departments from the 1940s through the 1980s still stuck with the .38 Special cartridge and specified guns chambered for it. It is their standard issue. A good number of departments carrying .357 revolvers required their officers to use only .38 Special rounds in them, fearing overpenetration and liability for injury to nearby innocent bystanders. The Model 67 found its niche with the police, and many used examples will be found today with police identification markings. Model 67s underwent some changes over the years. In 1977, with the Model 67-1, the gas ring was changed in location from the yoke to the cylinder. The nostalgic pinned barrel was abandoned in 1982 to speed production. In 1988, the Model 67-2 appeared, featuring a new yoke retention system, a quote floating hand, that part that rotates the cylinder, a radius stud package that eliminated the pins in the hand, and a redesigned hammer nose bushing. In 1993, saw the Model 67-3 evolving a change in the configuration of the extractor. The frame was also drilled and tapped under the slightly modified rear sight leaf for scope mounts. Additionally, rubber Hogue grips were used. In 1996, the square butt was dropped in favor of the round version. Then, in 1997, the shape of the cylinder release thumb piece was changed to a teardrop configuration, and the trigger became a metal injection molded part. With the Model 67-4 in 1998, the frame was changed to eliminate the cylinder stop stud, the grip frame grooving was stopped, and MIM parts were used, and a floating firing pin in the frame necessitated some changes to the internals. The formerly graceful profile of the frame was affected, definitely. In 2001, to help comply with numerous regulations, a fired case was included with each gun shipped. In 2002, an internal key lock system was introduced to the Model 67-5, and this was the SOP to certain overzealous gun control politicians. The ugly hole in the side was still controversial, and many feel it has no place on any handgun since possible malfunctions of the key lock could tie up the gun and be disastrous in defensive situations. Interesting enough, some Dash 5s have been observed to be shipped as recently as late 2016. They were determined to be cleanups rather than in-stock older parts. In 2004, a two-piece sleeved barrel was authorized for the 67-6. Also appearing were some heavy non-tapered conventional barrels with no ejector shroud. These were probably older part cleanups. The Model 67-6 is still being made and continues to be a popular pistol. Although semi-automatics and plastic frame pistols have now become the rage, Model 67 is still in demand, particularly in the civilian sector. Believe it or not, it is still being manufactured since 1972. Those who think that the .38 special cartridge is dead definitely have another thing coming. It is still well liked and available everywhere. And to round up my revolver thing, I'm going to give you some advantages and disadvantages of revolvers. I got about 19 points to give you. The first is it is easy to teach loading, unloading, and safety, relatively. It can be difficult to learn to shoot because of a long double-action trigger. It's more difficult to learn efficient reloading. Slower recoil recovery and less controllability results in slower progress in that cycle of learning. It's easier for beginners or weak shooters to handle because there is no slide stop, no magazine release, or safety to operate. It's less reliable in training because improper unloading techniques can cause malfunctions. It has a smaller ammunition capacity and is slower to reload. The gun is bulky for ammunition capacity and power. It's less vulnerable to ammunition failure, though, but malfunctions which do occur are generally harder to solve in the field. If your revolver gets hung up, it's because something stuck in the cylinder. It's more forgiving of careless handling. It's more foolproof for issue to large number of security people for varying abilities, training, and carefulness. It's depending on the person, it can be less accurate shooting because of that long trigger travel and increased perceived and felt recoil. It's less chance of unintentional discharge because of a heavy double-action trigger pull. Mechanical functioning is safer because safety block prevents multiple rounds from firing unless the trigger is pulled again. Can be cleaned without disassembly. It's less maintenance sensitive in domestic use, less critical of various ammunition types and ammunition quality. Backup ammo can be bulky, though, and cumbersome to carry. Recoil is transmitted upon small areas of hand, thus decreasing control of the weapon. It's less durable for long-term use, especially with heavy loads. And it's less expensive gun usually for ammunition and training time. I think if I put up a graph and made all these things like all the pros on one side and all the negatives, it'd be probably easier. But that's it in a nutshell about revolvers. One thing I want to note, though, some of the negatives that I mentioned there were talking about if you were a security or a police officer. Civilians don't have to worry about some of that stuff. One thing you will find out, though, if you get a really comfortable revolver with a really short barrel, you're going to have recoil like nobody's business because the gases will expand and don't have time to expand in a longer barrel. And so the recoil is just going to bark. So your gun's going to do a lot of jerking upward. Not going to be real comfortable if you have a real powerful caliber that you're using or a lot of powder. But your mileage may vary. I want you to go to the range if you're looking at buying a firearm. And Mike's going to talk about that next week. Revolvers are really, really old school, but I really, really like them. If you get the right trainer, it can make all the difference in the world. Speaking of Mike, he's up next.
Thank you, Ken, and welcome to another Tips and Review segment. I am Michael Woodland, and today we're going to discuss cleaning a rifle properly. How many of us take the time to actually clean our firearm after every session at the range? How many of us actually fire our rifles once a month but clean the same firearm once a week? There is no real true answer, but how you view your firearm and your belief. Would you think of me differently if I told you I do not clean my firearm regularly? Upon my earlier days in the Army, I took notice at how my shot groups started out in a spreading pattern, but after a few rounds, the shot groups were so tight, it was like artwork. At the same time, I didn't realize that residue from the bullet and the gases were making it better, so to speak. It is important to understand how your firearm operates in a variety of conditions to understand it better. Me personally, I do not clean my firearm after every session at the range or match I frequent. My M4 rifle has not been cleaned in over 6 months, but I do not run it hard. The determination of when to clean my M4 rifle is when my shot groups start to spread out from being consistently close. There has never been any malfunctions with my firearm due to the lack of maintenance, but if I have a match or event that I consider to be high profile, then I will clean it in order to lessen the chances of mishaps from lack of cleaning. Then there is the belief that the firearms of today will run dirty and keep going. This could be true, but when the time is needed to pull your firearm, you do not want to be correcting any type of malfunctions, especially when your life is on the line. With that being said, this is my personal opinion on how to clean my rifle, and I do not say this is the gospel, but a technique that works for me. There are multiple ways to clean your firearm, and if you go to YouTube, there are a ton of videos to get a general idea. Me personally, I like to use Rogers Advanced Gun Cleaning Solution and can be found at rogersshootingschool.com. If you are not one who likes to put your firearm in water, this is not going to be the solution for you. My experience with this product has been going on now for over 3 years and never had any issues. There are many solutions and cleaners out there that works in different processes, but a rag, a bore brush for the caliber of your firearm, CLP, also known as cleaning, lubricant, and protectant, and a regular cleaning brush that looks like a toothbrush will also get the job done. Cleaning your firearm is just as important as firing it. It is a process that goes hand in hand. Take a few moments and clean your firearm and take a look for anything that is out of place or looks worn. Keep your firearm in top working order as you do with the maintenance of your vehicle, and you will be happy with it for years to come. For those who are looking to contact me, visit blackmanwiththegun.com and under the Leaders tab, click on my name, Michael Woodland, and shoot me an email. Until next week, keep shooting, keep practicing, and have fun. Back to you, Ken.
Is the cost of ammo bringing you down? Are you ready to have fun with your firearm again? If you need ammo, your friend and brother from a different mother has the answer. LuckyGunner.com. Good prices. LuckyGunner.com. If your time is valuable, LuckyGunner.com. Order your ammo today. LuckyGunner.com. Where you won't waste your time and the shipping is fast. It's 110% guaranteed. LuckyGunner.com.
Are we the meanest? Are we the prettiest? Are we the baddest mofo low down around this town? Are we not the supporters of the black man with a gun? I can't hear you. Patreon.com/black man with a gun.
Hi, this is Avery, also known as Skip, with Skip's Tactical Solutions. I would love for you to check out my podcast called Skip's Tactical Solutions, and it can be found in all podcast players. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Skip's Tactical Solutions. And while you're at it, feel free to check out my website. That's skipstacticalsolutions.com. All right, Ken, back to you.
What's new with me?
I'm actually in the midst of a rediscovery. There are a lot of new gun owners just finding me with the help of firearms instructor and entrepreneur named Avery Skipalis. Avery is now a part of our family. You'll see her on videos every Thursday night at 8 o'clock Eastern. She does a talk to me on Thursday kind of thing. And if I can, I'm going to try to be with her. Michael said something to me a few weeks ago that took a while to hit me. He basically said, share. He said a whole lot more than that, but in essence, he reminded me that all I really want to do is share my life experiences with people that care. I'm old school, and we tend to hoard stuff, keep things close to the chest. What's mine is mine. It's a survival mindset that's good sometimes, but not all the time. I just want to take care of me and mine. And guess what? You are in my family. You and I have come a long way. Some of you have been with me all 601 episodes. Thank you for that. Some of you support me through our Patreon campaign, and Lord knows that's appreciated. 2019 ended 2 sponsorships, so I'm choking financially right now, but it's my own fault, doggone it. I do too much. You know, my dad passed away, and just thinking about it earlier kind of bummed me out. I was secretly hoping that mug left me some money, actually. I ain't gonna lie. After I stopped crying, well, I ain't really stopped, but I hoped he had sometime tucked some money away from me or something. But hey, I ain't gonna do that to my son. You know, my dad had a lot of stuff. He was gangster. And it made me realize that I need to consolidate some of my stuff too. So I got a whole bunch of stuff I'm going to start selling, getting rid of, downsizing, you know. Like one of the things I'd like to let go is a whole Dillon Precision reloading set. The whole thing. Still in the boxes. I got some great friends at Dillon. But I ain't reloading. I got a custom guitar and a Harley to let go. I still plan to ride though, after I minimize. I'm talking to my wife right now trying to move out of Maryland and going down south somewhere. Even though I might regret it. But I do want to go. I've always wanted to live where there's a whole bunch of issues, sinkholes, hurricanes, and the Florida man running around. In the news, I'll be doing a live show somewhere near the D.C. waterfront the last Thursday of the month of February. Don't know how that's going to work yet. The guy's been real secretive and not really giving me a whole bunch of information. But I've been asked by a professional audio engineer that has some definite connection somewhere. We'll see how that goes. And then the second weekend in March, I'm going down to Podfest Multimedia Expo in Orlando, Florida. And I'll be doing something down there, like emceeing the thing, which is going to be really special to me. And I'm selling stuff so that I can afford to travel to Indiana in April to the NRA annual meeting. I'm going to get a get-up. A get-up? How about a meetup? Yeah, I'm going to get a meetup if I can get there. And last week I contracted a company to make a keychain for us. I got 2 pre-orders so far, and it should be at my house by mid-March. And then I will send it out to you personally. And if you want to get in on it, the link will be in the show notes for our Black Man with a Gun fan keychain. And I just ordered a few copies of my book, Black Man with a Gun Reloaded, shipped to my house so I can send out autographed copies. You can still get it on Amazon.com, but if you want one of these, let a brother know. And please, if you're a YouTube watcher, subscribe to our channel, blackmanwithagun.tv. Trying to hit 1,000 by Christmas. I know, right? That's a long ways. I got low expectations. No, actually, and also if you're an Instagram person, join me there too. I got too many websites, too many links, too many social media. I'm trying to consolidate in 2019 thanks to Avery. My Instagram account that I'll be using is Black Man with Gun. There's no A in this one. Cool. You know, Confucius said, when I walk along with 2 others, from at least one, I'll be able to learn. That's my plan with Avery and Michael in 2019. And I'm hoping it's just they're going to walk with me. my friend. Just in case nobody has told you this today, I love you, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Until next week, shalom, baby.
Until next time, friends.
To keep in touch with Ken and his cause, head over to blackmanwithagun.com.